Hello and welcome to the Pulse. In April, the government launched a 3-month consultation on improving animal welfare in Hong Kong. We'll look at whether the proposals go far enough to prevent animal cruelty. The government might give the public 3 months to comment on animal welfare, but a mere 20 days' worth of consultation was deemed to be sufficient for changing extradition laws for places where there is little or no human rights protection. Meanwhile, and to no one's great surprise, Beijing says it fully supports the HKSAR on this matter, adding that people who spread made-up fears over the extradition laws are doing so with an ulterior motive.
我今日根據立法會議事規則第54.5條，去信立法會內務委員會主席，為條例草案恢復二讀辯論作準備，以期喺6月12號恢復條例草案嘅二讀辯論。
直上大會嘅決定呢，係一個好艱難嘅決定。我哋先要做好呢個條例嘅修訂，有咗個法律基礎呢，我哋再用我哋最大嘅誠意去磋商、去游說而基於大家有共同嘅目標，都係要伸張正義。咁我哋都係抱住呢個嘅決心呢嚟到做呢件事嘅。
Well, with us in the studio to talk about the extradition controversy is James Tien, the Honorary Chairman of the Liberal Party. You were the person who, about a decade and a half ago, were perhaps the trigger point for scrapping the Article 23 legislation, having been the person in the pro-government camp who said, you know, this just isn't going to work. Is this a similar situation?
Well, I think this is actually a worse situation because the Article 23 is actually in the basic law. That means we have to do it. The current argument on the extradition bill is not even in the basic law. And as a member of the Basic Law Consultative Committee back in the 80s, we did thoroughly debated this particular point. And at that time, the decision by the leadership was that to sort of highlight the high degree of autonomy.
You say that was discussed within the Basic Law Drafting Committee?
And the Basic Law Consultative Committee. I'm the member of a consultative committee. I wasn't senior enough to be a drafting committee member at that time. We did talk about that. And the reason we agreed to do that is maybe back in the 80s or 90s, the difference between the rule of law in China and the rule of law in Hong Kong is even further than today. So that was the decision to put Hong Kong people, especially capitalists like myself at that time, to say that, okay, this is the one good reason you should stay in Hong Kong. Don't be too concerned about the new concept, a brand new concept of one country, two system at that time. So it wasn't something like some of the current officials that's saying it was overlooked, so we got to plug the hole. I don't think that's actually factual. If government wants to do it, I think a better way to do it is to say that after 20 years of development, look at China's technology development, the financial side, every other side, even on human rights side, maybe except the legal side, had great improvement. Maybe it's time to talk about it. The current situation is that although the rule of law in China had advanced a lot compared to 1997, it is still not quite up to what we are experiencing in Hong Kong. But the fact is, from businessmen to professional to the grassroots, we simply don't have faith in their rule of law. That's why we're so concerned that if this bill passed through, you're going to send us to be judged in mainland. That's the difference, because Article 23 in 2003, even if it were passed at that time, even if you committed a crime, it's going to be judged in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong people do have faith in our judiciary system a lot more than on the mainland. And this is something we have to explain to the Beijing leaders.
So if you were in LegCo, you're still the Honorary Chairman of the Liberal Party, but if you were in LegCo, would you be voting for this?
It's very difficult to vote no against what government wants to do. But to make things even worse on this particular case, I really don't think it's Carrie Lam or Sec for Security John Lee's idea. I really think the decision is with Beijing. So I do pity Carrie as chief executive to say that I'm going to stand firm, I'm going to do it before the summer recess. It's urgency, the Taiwan issue is urgency, and we all know it's not urgent. So she's just getting herself into worse and worse trouble with Hong Kong people. The message seems to be, it's hardly, if this law is passed, it's hardly likely that you will have one case a year. Otherwise, Carrie Lam will be so busy with dealing with this extradition issue, individual issue, all the time.
Well, that's right, because the chief executive has to be the one
that's
who
right. She has to pass
initiates the proceedings.
Right, so that's why she keeps saying that I will be safeguarding this. But we're saying that, hey, you cannot be chief executive forever. Once the law is in there, it will be in there. But the point is that the Legislative Council, I'm saying that today the pro-establishment legislators will all be up for re-election next September, and they need help. And whose help? The help is not coming from chief executive, but definitely the CLO have a lot of influence in all sorts of elections in Hong Kong nowadays. If you look at the pro-establishment side, including the business community, the legislators, in my personal view, are listening to CLO or Beijing more than Hong Kong government.
Do you think it's amenable to sufficient amendment to make it less worrying?
Okay, this is what Liberal Party is trying to do, trying to say that even if we have to fast it, although we don't buy the argument about the Taiwan case, and we don't buy the argument that Hong Kong has been a criminal haven for the last 20 years, and all the stuff that was being put to us. And we said that if you have to pass it, the one thing is the retrospective point. In Hong Kong, the common law, whatever law we pass in the Legislative Council, it's always we pass today after thoroughly debated. Then it starts to take action today onwards. You don't go backwards. This law is saying that if the law is passed, I could get you for all the crimes you did in the past. And to the business community, it's out of the 37 clauses, it's 13 dealing with false documentation and 15 about bribery. Now, these two issues remain. A lot of businessmen are concerned what they did 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Like you mentioned, factories in Dongguan, what did this factory owners have to do to get their businesses done in those days? Of course, today, it's a big difference. So we're arguing that could we put in an amendment to make that the retrospective only 3 years?
I mean, obviously the business community have these concerns, but I think there's even greater concerns, are there not, among people in the opposition camp who fear that what is legal in Hong Kong will become the subject of extradition proceedings? Maybe not for the reasons stated, not that they are political acts, but they'll find other reasons to bring people across the border.
That's very true. And this is what we've been explaining to the mainland officials as well as the Hong Kong government. It's simply the faith that we do not have on the whole mainland judiciary system. So it's not just plain businessmen. It's not the fact that they took away 7 or 8 crimes, such as tax evasion, from that law that will put people's mind at ease, because they could always get you on the other ones using that as an excuse.
And again, do you think that the government really is open to amendment of the law now?
I don't think so. They keep saying that there's room for amendment, you could give some idea. Well, we hope that if we could convince government, for their sake, it's probably better to take in these amendments. Because if you look at the Hong Kong situation now, between the US and China trade war, we're already in a big mess. We want to develop the bigger Bay Area, and we want to turn that area into an international financial center. We do need help of international bankers. And if you put this extradition law the way it is, and if they're worried about being extradited on certain things they do in the past, or they have done in the past, or they will do in future in the bigger Bay Area, it will certainly go against the aim of our economic development in the next few years. And that certainly could be detrimental to the mainland as well.
What do you think is the reason for the way, I mean, they're actually changing the rules of LegCo to get this through, taking out the bill stage.
Yep, that's even worse. Why would you want to throw the whole thing away? Now, actually, the credibility of the Legislative Council is at stake. This is also one way I look at it, having been a legislator for all these years. Although the pandemics created a mess by saying that you cannot even form a bills committee, but they still have time to do it, what I'm saying is they don't have to pass it by July 1st. Now, whether the US trade war, the current development, has anything to do with it. I'm not too sure. Maybe it does, because I see that the issue has been escalated all the way up to central leadership's level ever since the trade war broke down. Is it because that mainland thinks that, hey, we better close the door of Hong Kong, or rather the window that used to be for Western capital or individuals to work into China? If we have a major trade war with the States, we just want to have full support for mainland, and the full support for mainland will have to include the SARs, which means Hong Kong. But if you look at what happened during March, that wasn't the scenario. But it certainly changed a lot in recent weeks between what CIO did and the central government's official asking our business leaders to Beijing to give us that message.
Let's see. James Tien, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be back after the break. We'll see you then. Welcome back. Many people keep pets for more than just good company. They're also part of the family. A study released in 2016 estimated that 289,000 Hong Kong households have pets. Census and Statistics Department figures also indicate animal ownership has risen 72% over the past decade. The government expects the number of dogs and cats in Hong Kong to reach 545,600 this year. But in a city as crowded and space-restricted as Hong Kong, the quality of life for animals, whether as pets, wild animals or livestock, is far from guaranteed.
For each of the past 5 years, an average 276 suspected cases of animal cruelty have been reported. Fewer than 10% of those reports have resulted in prosecution. Animal lovers say it's not enough. In April, the Agriculture, Fisheries and Conservation Department, or AFCD, launched a public consultation on amending the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Ordinance, CAP 169. It proposes increasing penalties and increasing potential imprisonment for animal cruelty offences from 3 years to 10 years. It also proposes introducing a positive duty of care, under which anyone responsible for an animal needs to ensure the welfare needs of the animal are met. An animal should never suffer unduly if the duty of care is properly exercised.
我哋亦都建議可以俾我哋公職人員咧去簽發一個叫做改善通知書。咁改善通知書咧係希望話喺動物受到痛苦之前咧，就能夠俾到嗰個宿主一啲建議去處理翻嗰件事，去採取翻一個適當嘅行動。咁如果宿主係冇遵守到我哋發出嘅改善通知書咧，佢係有機會被檢控嘅。
Last weekend, animal lovers rallied to urge the government to introduce stronger animal welfare legislation. Organizers say 6,000 took part. The police say 1,000. The protesters say current laws in relation to animal welfare are scattered and outdated.
紅絲帶係一個象徵嚟嘅，就係我哋希望即係用呢一個代表住可能紅色啦，其實亦都代表住血啦。喺以往虐打虐殺嘅動物有好多新聞令我哋心痛。我哋認為其實係時候要終結呢件事，係咪係時候香港有一個整全嘅動物福利法？我哋應該要訂立一條新嘅動物福利法，與時並進，既要懲罰虐打虐殺動物嘅人士，亦都要全面檢視呢個城市同動物相關嘅政策。
希望政府自己自身都做好嗰個行為啦，例如嗰個人道毀滅個問題啦，係咪？其二嘅，我哋希望佢全面推行呢個教育動物教育嘅概念。
So many audience attending here, and a lot of citizens, they consider and they want to the co-competitive welfare law. Will you consider again to make the more design of the law not only CAP 169?
although it's an amendment of CAP 169, it does introduce the welfare law. It introduces a law that everybody who's responsible for an animal must provide or must take reasonable steps to provide for the welfare needs of that animal. So it encompasses all different types of situations.
The fate of many animals in Hong Kong is affected by animal welfare laws, but a recent case involving one specific dog provoked much anger towards AFCD's own policy on animal euthanization. In mid-March, around 30 animal concern groups asked for the department for an apology for killing a dog, Heaven, that had arrived here after accidentally boarding a cargo ship in Thailand. Dog lover Cliver Chan tried to reclaim Heaven from the AFCD after getting in touch with its Thai owner.
咁其實最荒謬一樣嘢就係佢首先要求我就係證明我哋即係狗主嘅身份。咁我都已經同佢解釋咗，就係狗主其實係泰國人啦。其實漁護署喺呢一方面其實都拗咗一輪嘅，就係話喂你提供唔到呢啲證明嘅話，我俾你攞嘅喎。咁跟住到佢哋話好啦，即係要我簽一個聲明，唔會有第二個人走出嚟聲稱佢係狗主。咁我話你好荒謬咯，成件事情我簽咗係咪就代表真係冇？我都係受委託嘅人，我都唔知㗎喎。請大家起立。你已經保障晒你㗎啦，但係我哋唯一嘅保障狗嘅生命已經俾你攞咗啦。咁我哋冇其他嘢，我哋只係想攞翻個遺體，好好即係同佢善終安葬啫。遺體公司去處理個遺體嘅時候咧，佢話佢未見過一個遺體喺溶雪解凍嘅時候，眼耳口鼻會係咁流血。咁我哋即係懷疑就係其實喺應該就係打咗針之後，可能就係將個遺體就係一件垃圾咯。
In terms of rabies risk, the AFCD classifies countries or places into 3 groups. Groups 1 and 2 are lower risk locations. Group 3, under which Thailand falls, is classified as extremely high risk. Under Hong Kong's Rabies Ordinance Cap 421 Section 6, an authorized officer may destroy any animal that may be rabid or has been in contact with a rabid animal.
咁作為一個獸醫，作為我哋政府咧，其實我哋人道毀滅每一隻動物咧，其實對於我嚟講都唔係一個好受嘅一個行為嚟嘅。但係為咗保障公共衞生啦，為咗保障香港嘅動物衞生啦，其實我哋都要即係選擇呢個咁嘅方法。
助理處長嘅説法咧係站唔住腳嘅，你明顯見得到船長簽咗一個嘅文件俾佢，係有機會係向香港漁護署去作出求助，而唔係叫佢即刻殺咗隻狗。如果處長再為即係呢件事咧，即係去嘗試去兜啦，或者去即係辯解嘅話咧，我擔心即係個情況就會即係越描越黑。說到底咧，香港嘅人道毀滅政策應該要立即檢討。
AFCD handles stray animals and abandoned animals at 4 animal management centers. Strays are normally kept for 4 days for rehoming, but most of those not claimed or adopted within that time are euthanized. In 2018, more than 1,000 dogs were killed.
The number of dogs being euthanized by AFCD has gone down, and they'll tell you that. It hasn't gone down because of their policies. It's gone down because there are so many rescue organizations now that people won't go to AFCD. You know, if they find a dog, they won't go to AFCD because they're afraid that the dog will be killed. So they go to an organization instead.
Individuals cannot adopt animals directly from the AFCD. Hong Kong Dog Rescue is one of the 16 approved animal welfare organizations through which individuals can adopt. It does its best to take dogs and puppies from the department no matter whether they are in good or bad health. Since Sally founded Hong Kong Dog Rescue in 2003, the organization has saved and rehomed more than 9,000 dogs. It has a no-kill policy, which means that no dog is euthanized unless extremely poor health makes it the only option. The government's euthanasia policy is not the focus of the current animal welfare consultation, But Sally says that in terms of broader animal welfare issues, the lack of adequate enforcement is a major issue.
It's not bringing in the new laws, it's not increasing the penalties, it's actually using the laws, making use of them to prosecute. I don't even understand why there has to be a public consultation. I don't even know why it has to be discussed. The animal cruelty laws in Hong Kong are so far behind. It shouldn't even be a matter for discussion. It should be, new laws put together and then, okay, these are the new laws.